Frank Sinatra spent the last years of his life carrying a secret he could never prove, but never stopped believing. The woman the world knew as Hollywood's defining actress, the entertainer whose image became synonymous with American cinema in the 1950s and 60s, didn't die the way the official record says she did. That's what Sinatra believed, and what his closest companion, Tonio Pedisano, finally committed to paper in his memoir, decades after both of them were gone. 60 years of official silence surrounded Marilyn Monroe's death, and what Sinatra pieced together in private paints a far darker picture than any coroner's report ever acknowledged. Born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1, 1926, Monroe entered a world with almost no stability attached to it. Her mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, had already lost 2 children named Robert and Bernice to a husband who ignored a custody order and took them to Kentucky. Gladys worked as a film negative cutter, went through a second short marriage to Martin Edward Mortensen, and then separated again. For decades, Marilyn carried Mortensen's name, though DNA testing in 2022 identified a man named Charles Stanley Gifford as her biological father, someone Gladys had a private affair with in 1925. Gifford already had 2 children from an earlier relationship, a daughter named Doris Elizabeth and a son named Charles Stanley, which gave Marilyn half-siblings she barely knew existed. Gladys placed Marilyn with foster parents Albert and Ida Belender in Hawthorne while working in the city, then brought her home in 1933 to a small house in Hollywood. That arrangement ended within a year when Gladys suffered a mental breakdown and received a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. A family friend named Grace Goddard stepped in, and what followed was 4 years of rotating homes and a growing stutter. Grace became her legal guardian in 1936, and after a period with Grace's aunt starting in September 1938, where Marilyn wrote for the school newspaper at Emerson Junior High, the arrangement shifted again when Grace's husband took a job in West Virginia in 1942. Unable to go with them under child protection laws, Marilyn married the neighbor's son, James Dougherty, just after her 16th birthday. Dougherty enlisted in the Merchant Marine in 1943 and shipped out to the Pacific in April 1944, and while he was away, Marilyn took work at a radio plane ammunition factory in Van Nuys. A photographer named David Conover, deployed to the factory by Captain Ronald Reagan to photograph female workers for morale purposes, found her there. She left the factory in January 1945 and signed with the Blue Book Model Agency in August 1945 against her husband's wishes, straightening and dyeing her hair blonde to fit the agency's requirements. By early 1946, 33 magazine covers carried her face, and an acting agency signed her that June. 20th Century Fox executive Ben Lyon arranged a screen test, and she secured a 6-month contract in August 1946. She adopted the stage name Marilyn Monroe, drawing from Broadway actress Marilyn Miller and her mother's maiden name, and the divorce from Dougherty followed in September. After Fox declined to renew her in August 1947, Columbia Pictures signed her in March 1948, where she appeared in a low-budget musical called Ladies of the Chorus, playing a chorus girl pursued by a wealthy man. Columbia let her go too. The person who actually changed her career was Johnny Hyde, vice president of the William Morris Agency, who placed her in 2 films that got audiences paying attention: John Huston's noir film The Asphalt Jungle and the drama All About Eve, both released in 1950. Limited screen time, but the attention was real. Hyde negotiated a 7-year contract with 20th Century Fox for her before dying of a heart attack in December 1950, just days after sealing the deal. Her popularity kept building through 1951 and 1952. The Army newspaper Stars and Stripes named her Miss Cheesecake of 1951 during the Korean War. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association named her the best young box office personality in February 1952. A romance with New York Yankees legend Joe DiMaggio developed around that same time. When a nude calendar she had posed for in 1949 became public in March 1952, she addressed it directly by discussing her financial struggles, which produced sympathy rather than damage, earned her the cover of Life magazine, and pushed 3 films into release: Don't Bother to Knock, Clash by Night, and We're Not Married. By 1953, Niagara fixed her trademark appearance on screen. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes defined her public persona, and How to Marry a Millionaire became her biggest commercial success to that point. Fox executive Daryl Zanuck blocked her repeatedly from serious dramatic roles. When she rejected a musical called The Girl in Pink Tights in 1954, the studio suspended her. To push back against the negative publicity, she and DiMaggio married in January 1954 and traveled to Japan, with Marilyn breaking away to perform for American service members in Korea. She settled with Fox in March, collected a $100,000 bonus, and took on the 7-year itch. The filming of that subway scene on Lexington Avenue in September 1954 produced the most replicated image of her career, and the film's 1955 release was a massive success. The marriage to DiMaggio didn't survive it, and his controlling behavior had worn her down enough that she ended the union entirely. After the divorce, Marilyn moved to Manhattan and studied at the Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg. She and photographer Milton Green founded Marilyn Monroe Productions, which opened a legal dispute with Fox over contract obligations. A new 7-year deal followed in 1955, giving her creative control. Bus Stop in August 1956 earned Golden Globe nominations, and her marriage to playwright Arthur Miller came that same year, though it faced pressure almost immediately when Miller came under investigation for alleged communist associations. The Prince and the Showgirl, her first independent production alongside Laurence Olivier, gained recognition in Europe. Health problems kept her away from film through 1957, and when she returned with Some Like It Hot in 1959, the difficult production earned her a Golden Globe Award. Her final film, The Misfits, written by Miller, cast her as a divorced woman forming connections with aging cowboys. Miller left her for photographer Inga Morath during production, and the Nevada divorce was finalized on June 29, 1961. By 1961, depression had become serious enough to require hospitalization, and both Joe DiMaggio and Frank Sinatra were among the friendships that held her together. She relocated permanently to California, appeared publicly enough to receive a Golden Globe Award in 1962, and collaborated with photographer Bert Stern on a series of photos later published as The Last Sitting. Fox fired her from Something's Got to Give in June 1962 over filming disruptions, then moved to renegotiate almost immediately. Those conversations never finished. On the night of August 4, 1962, at her home in the Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles, housekeeper Eunice Murray woke at 3 a.m. and couldn't get a response from Marilyn's locked bedroom. Psychiatrist Ralph Greenson broke in through a window and found her motionless in her bed. Physician Hyman Engelberg arrived at 3:50 a.m. and confirmed her death. Police received notification at 4:25 a.m., and the toxicology report attributed the cause to acute barbiturate poisoning with chloral hydrate and pentobarbital found in her blood and pentobarbital in her liver. Empty medicine bottles surrounded the bed. Deputy Coroner Thomas Noguchi ruled her death self-inflicted, citing her documented history of severe depression, intentional overdoses, and no evidence pointing directly to another party. DiMaggio arranged a private funeral at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery on August 8, attended only by her closest associates, and he sent roses to her grave every single week until his own death, a promise she had once asked him to keep. Conspiracy theories circulated through the following decades. Norman Mailer's 1973 biography pushed speculation into mainstream conversation, and in 1982, Los Angeles County District Attorney John Van de Kamp conducted a threshold investigation that found no evidence of murder. Sinatra never accepted that conclusion. In his memoir, Sinatra and Me, in the Wee Small Hours, Opadisano wrote that Sinatra carried doubts about her death for the rest of his life. Marilyn had trusted Sinatra with private details about her relationships with President John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, and she turned to him when both those connections ended without explanation. The weekend before she died, she stayed at the Cal Neva Lodge near Lake Tahoe, a resort Sinatra partly owned. According to Opadisano, Marilyn had planned to announce her reconciliation with DiMaggio at a press conference the following week, and those connected to the Kennedy circle feared that public appearance would expose her ties to the family. Sinatra believed she would never have voluntarily said anything damaging because she still cared deeply for John Kennedy, and he spent years convinced that the press conference announcement had sealed her fate. Sinatra's attorney, Mickey Rudin, told him after her death that a rumor was circulating that she had been killed with a barbiturate suppository. Chicago organized crime figure Sam Giancana suggested someone connected to both the Kennedy family and to Sinatra had been responsible. Los Angeles mobster Johnny Roselli told Sinatra directly that she had been deliberately silenced to protect the Kennedys' reputation. Pulling together what Rudin said, what his contacts in organized crime described, and his own knowledge of her final days, Sinatra concluded that Robert F. Kennedy, working with labor leader Jimmy Hoffa, had arranged for a compromised medical examiner to administer a fatal dose to Marilyn while she was unconscious. The motive was the threat her renewed public visibility alongside DiMaggio posed to the Kennedy political reputation ahead of the 1964 presidential election. Sinatra also believed organized crime handled the logistics in exchange for union support for Kennedy's campaign, a quiet arrangement that kept the most powerful people insulated from direct involvement. He hired private investigators, examined her phone records, and reviewed medical documents for years looking for something he could take further. Definitive proof never came, but according to Opedisano, Sinatra died believing that Marilyn Monroe was murdered at the intersection of political power, organized crime, and the desperate fear of a scandal, and that the Los Angeles Police Department helped conceal the truth beneath an overdose verdict.